We start this hour with President Donald Trump's decision to return home from his 12-day trip to Asia early, after he reportedly skipped a full session of the East Asia Summit in Manila yesterday due to time constraints. Leaders from the remaining 18 countries reportedly met in the Philippine capital anyway to discuss continued provocations by North Korea and what the collective response should be. However, Trump didn't miss a beat, calling the trip, quote, very successful.
Everywhere we went, our foreign hosts greeted the American delegation, myself included, with incredible warmth, hospitality, and most importantly, respect. And this great respect showed very well our country is further evidence that America's renewed confidence and standing in the world has never been stronger than it is right now.
This comes after the president visited South Korea, China, Vietnam, Japan, and the Philippines. Meanwhile, North Korea's state media has criticized Trump for calling their leader, Kim Jong-un, a coward because he canceled a visit to the inter-Korean border. In an editorial for the state-run media outlet, the author wrote, quote, "The worst crime for which Trump can never be pardoned is that he dared to malignantly hurt the dignity of the supreme leadership. He should know that he is a hideous criminal sentenced to death by the Korean people." For more, let's bring in Bart Chilton, former commissioner at the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission and guest host of Boom Bust here on RT America. Commissioner Chilton, thanks for being here. I want to start first by getting your take on the president's trip to Asia. Was it successful?
Well, actually, I had a pretty low bar, and I'm pleased to say he, surpassed that low bar. But I'm not sure that there is as much substance as people think. I think it was a lot more symbolism, and I think the proof of that is that just a short time ago he held a news conference, one that he had telegraphed when he was still in Asia, saying there'll be a big announcement when we get back and the time and dates to be set. And that big announcement today was he essentially ran through his daytimer schedule and said, I met with these people, I had a parade, we had a dinner, the wife was there. So look, I mean, it's important to have good relations with foreign leaders, but these are some of the savviest traders on the earth. And it doesn't matter how well liked you think you may be, they're going to eat our lunch if we're not tough. And our president talks tough on trade, and I support him in trying to do the right thing. But the bottom line is, it remains to be seen if this trip will mean anything in the long term.
Commissioner, some in the media, they criticize the president for saying the Japanese should build cars in the U.S. as if they don't already. So is that fair criticism?
It's really not, Ashley. I mean, I read some of those stories, and when I first read it, I thought, wait a minute, he's got to know. The president has to know that the Japanese build cars in the U.S. And the bottom line is it was a really low blow by some in the media. I read the whole transcript, and he was thanking the car companies, and he was essentially urging them to do more. But, I mean, they produce 4 million, the Japanese produce 4 million cars in the U.S. every year. Everybody knows that. The president knows that. He misspeaks a lot. And, he's justifiably criticized for it, but I think this one was really pretty much a bogus hit.
Now, on this trip, President Trump, he really touted the strong U.S. economy, but was that the right message to be sending to these heads of state?
Well, two things, Ashley. One is that over there, and particularly the first couple of stops with President Abe in Japan and President Xi in China, they're tremendously popular. They've never been more popular in their countries. And the president is not that popular back home, although his poll numbers have gone up a little bit. So, we talked about the economy, and it's okay for him to take credit. I mean, the economy is doing really well. We've got record stock market numbers. Our growth is improving. We had 3.1% in the third quarter. So it's okay for him to talk about that. But what was noticeably absent, Ashley, is that he didn't talk about the things that American presidents typically talk about. He didn't talk about freedom of the press. He didn't talk about human rights. He didn't talk about American values. And that's something that I think was, to me, it was obviously lacking the entire time of the president's trip, Ashley.
And those are obviously very important issues that should have been brought up. In the past, you've called the president the deal maker in chief, something the president also prides himself on. Now, were there any substantive deals that came from this trip on trade or anything else?
Well, I mean, he had a couple of announcements about Boeing, selling some more planes, and I don't mean to make light of that. If you're a Boeing employee, you should be happy about that. But by and large, no. There was no, trade deal. I mean, he's tearing up trade deals right now at a time when he doesn't even have all the staff at the United States Trade Representative's office to negotiate these things. And these trade deals are tough, and they take a long time. So, I get a little bit worried about his mantra, and his message is so tough. But, like they say, when the rubber hits the road, are we actually going to do better for American consumers and for our American economy? We hope so, but so far, there's not much there.
Finally, Commissioner, who were the winners or losers on this trip, if any?
Xi Jinping, president of China. I mean, I think a lot of the pomp and circumstance that was appreciated by President Trump, that, Xi Jinping was looking pretty great. I think he has pretty much taken on the mantle of a world leader. The U.S. president was deemed as probably the most powerful person in the world, and I'm not sure that's the case right now. Certainly, Xi Jinping would have a right to say he is the most powerful person on earth.
All right, Bart Chilton, thank you so much, former commissioner at the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission and guest host of Boom Bust here on RT America. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks.